I couldn't believe what my boss just asked me to do. Not over email, not in person, he actually texted me. Hey, can you house my wife, toddler, and dog for a week in January? And then he added like an afterthought that if that didn't work, he'd ask the company to pay for his accommodations. I stared at my phone for a full minute. I thought I was overreacting at first. I mean, we work together, we're not friends, we never hang out. Why would I host his family? Let me back up. I've worked at this company for over a decade. I won't give too many details because I don't want this traced back to me, but the CEO, let's call him Dick because that's what he is, has this golden boy. His name is Bob, and Bob got married a few years ago, had a kid, and his wife became a SAHM. Dick loved that, thought it was so admirable, so he promoted Bob, gave him all these raises. Meanwhile, Bob started showing up later and later to the office. He missed meetings. When he was there, he slept at his desk. But no one cared because Bob was a family man. I, on the other hand, got silently demoted for daring to have a baby myself. Nothing changed in my performance. I actually took on more work, but Dick acted like I was betraying him by having a child. So Bob kept climbing. A year ago, Bob's family had some emergency and they had to move across the country. He got another promotion as soon as they settled. He went from being under me to being at my level. Then a couple months ago, he got promoted again to the highest level he can reach. Now he outranks me, and then that text comes. He's asking me to host his wife, toddler, and dog for a whole week. He didn't even call, just a casual text like he was asking me to water his plants. I haven't had a raise in 4 years. I'm still doing the same job I was demoted from, and he's asking me to open my home to his family. The audacity, I'm gobsmacked, utterly gobsmacked. I took a screenshot of the text and sent it to my husband. He said, "Is he serious?" I said I didn't know. I thought about saying no outright, but I didn't want to cause drama at work. That's the thing about toxic jobs, your normal meter breaks. You start thinking maybe you're the one being unreasonable. Maybe he's just asking a favor. But no, this is insane. You don't ask a coworker to house your family unless you're really close friends. We're not. I decided to wait until my meeting with Dick to bring it up because I knew Bob had already talked to him. Dick loves Bob. Dick would probably tell me I should feel honored, so I spent the morning dreading it. I took an aspirin. I had a headache already just thinking about the conversation. Here's the thing, I know I'm underreacting. People on Reddit would tell me to go to HR or start looking for a new job, but it's complicated. Bob is the golden boy and HR here is a joke. They're not going to do anything about a boss asking for a favor, even if it's wildly inappropriate, so I'm stuck. I either say no and risk making an enemy out of the CEO's favorite, or I say yes and let them walk all over me again. I hate this. I hate that I have to even think about it. I've given this company over a decade of my life, and this is how they treat me. Bob gets promoted for having a family while I get demoted for having one. Now he wants me to play host to his family while he probably goes on a business trip paid for by the company. No, just no. I'm about to walk into that meeting now. I can feel the panic rising. I'm going to say no, I have to, but I'm also terrified of the fallout. I guess I'll update you all later if I don't get fired first. End of first story. I thought that was bad, but now I've got another story that still makes my stomach turn. This one's about my ex, Nate. He dumped me in January after 9 years together. 9 years. He said I wasn't wife material. Then months later, he reached out because he needed to get something off his chest. And the something he needed to get off his chest. It made me laugh so hard I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Let me start at the beginning. I met Nate when I was 18, just out of high school. He was 19. We were young, stupid, in love, or so I thought. I gave him everything, and I mean everything. For 9 years, I lost myself in him. He was my whole world. Every decision I made was for him. He went through a depressive episode, and I held his hand through every dark day. I helped him keep his grades up when he wanted to drop out. I worked 2 jobs so he could focus on college. His parents disowned him for nearly 3 years because they didn't agree with his major or the college he chose. So I picked up the slack. I was also a college student at the time, but I didn't care. I loved him. Then his parents started talking to him again. They started financially supporting him. We moved into a new apartment. Nate told me he wanted me to quit my job. He said it was his turn to take care of me. I didn't quit because I'm not an idiot. But for 16 months, everything was great. He spoiled me. I thought we were finally on the right track. But then he started pulling away. He made new friends at work and suddenly I was invisible. He'd come home late, ignore me, scroll through his phone while I talked. I told myself it was just a phase. Then December hit and he did a complete 180. He love-bombed me like crazy. He bought me gifts, planned date nights, cooked my favorite meals. He made Christmas magical. I mean, he really went all out. I was convinced he was going to propose on January 2nd. That was our day. We always celebrated the anniversary of our first date on January 2nd. So I waited all day. He made me my favorite dinner. He gave a speech about how I was his first love, how I'd been there since high school. I kept thinking any minute now he's going to pull out a ring, but he didn't propose. He dumped me. The speech kept going and my world fell apart in real time. He tried to sugarcoat it, but the gist was this: you were a good girlfriend, but that's all you'll ever be to me, a girlfriend. I don't see you as my wife or the mother of my children. He said he loved me but wasn't in love with me. He said he needed to find himself. 9 years and that's what I got. I was devastated. I cried for weeks. I couldn't eat. I lost 10 pounds. My friends told me he was an asshole, but I still loved him. I wanted him back. I sent a few texts, called a few times. He ignored me, so I stopped. I started therapy. I focused on myself. I got a promotion at work. I started running. By the time summer came, I was doing okay. Not great, but okay. Then out of nowhere, he texted me. It was a random Tuesday night. Hey, I need to talk to you. It's important. Can we meet? I stared at the message for 5 minutes. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. I replied, "What's up?" he said. "I've been holding on to something. I need to get it off my chest." Please, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. Maybe he wanted me back. Maybe he was sorry. Maybe he'd realized he made a mistake. When I saw him, he looked terrible, pale, tired, like he hadn't slept in weeks. I sat down across from him. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "What's going on, Nate?" He took a deep breath. "I need to tell you the truth about why I broke up with you." I nodded. "Okay," he said. "I met someone at work, a girl. I fell for her, that's why I ended things. I thought she was the one. I thought I could have a future with her. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All that time he'd been emotionally cheating on me, maybe physically too. I didn't ask, I didn't want to know. "So why are you telling me this now?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He dropped his head. "Because she rejected me. She said she didn't feel the same way. She called me a piece of trash and told me to never speak to her again." I almost laughed. I didn't, but I almost did. "So you left me for someone who wasn't even interested in you?" "I thought she was. I was wrong." I stood up. "I'm sorry, Nate, that sucks for you. But I don't care anymore." I walked out of the coffee shop. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief, and honestly, I felt a little bit of schadenfreude. He threw away 9 years for a woman who didn't want him. That's karma, I guess, but he didn't stop. A week later, he started texting me again. "I miss you. I made a mistake. Can we try again?" I blocked him. Then he started calling from different numbers. He even showed up at my apartment. I had to tell my building manager to ban him. He's been stalking me for months. I had to file a police report. It's terrifying. I thought I was overreacting at first, but the officer told me this is classic behavior. He can't accept that I moved on, so now I'm living in fear of my ex. The guy who said I wasn't wife material now can't let me go. I'm in therapy, I have a security camera, and I'm considering changing jobs. All because he couldn't keep it in his pants and then couldn't handle being rejected. I don't know what the moral of this story is. Maybe it's that trash takes itself out. But sometimes it comes back and tries to get in your trash can. I wish I could say that story was the only drama in my life, but nope. My family's got their own mess. This one is about my son, who's 16, and his ex-girlfriend. It started with a pregnancy announcement that blew our family apart. My son, let's call him Jake, turned 16 in August. He had a girlfriend, Sarah, who was almost 17. They'd been together for about a year. They broke up about a month before we got the call. Sarah's parents reached out to me and my wife. They said Sarah was pregnant. She was already showing a little bit, and the dates lined up with when she and Jake were together. My wife and I panicked. We're not wealthy. A baby at 16, that would change everything. We waited a couple of days before telling Jake. He didn't know. When we told him, he immediately said, "It's not mine. I never had sex with her." I didn't believe him. I knew he was sexually active. He asked me for condoms before. I'd given him restocks, as he called it. But he kept insisting they never did it. He said he'd cheated on her. I had a heart-to-heart with him, and he admitted he'd been seeing someone else on the side. He said he always wrapped it with Sarah, but they never actually had intercourse. That sounded like bullshit to me, but something in his voice made me hesitate. I started to believe him. My wife didn't. She thought I was enabling him. She said I was part of boy culture, making excuses for him. We had a huge fight. She wanted to accept paternity and figure out a plan. I wanted to wait for a test. We had a meeting with Sarah's family. My wife started the conversation by accepting that Jake was the father. She was already talking about child support and shared custody. Jake interrupted. He stood up and said, "I'm not the dad. We never did it. I cheated on her with someone else." Everyone froze. Sarah looked at the floor. Her parents looked confused. Then Jake dropped another bombshell. He said, "The person I cheated with was a guy. I'm bisexual. I've been seeing a boy from school." My wife nearly fainted. I just sat there processing. Sarah's mom started crying. Her dad looked like he wanted to punch someone. Sarah admitted they rarely had sex, but she insisted the timing was right. She said she and Jake did do something once, but Jake claimed it was just oral. She said it was more. It was a mess. We decided to wait for a paternity test. It took 3 weeks. During that time, my wife barely spoke to me. She was furious that I believed Jake. She said I was choosing his lies over the truth. Sarah's parents demanded we pay for her medical bills. Jake stayed in his room texting his boyfriend. The test came back negative. Jake was not the father. Sarah had been sleeping with someone else, another boy from school. She didn't know who the father was. She had been cheating on Jake, and he had been cheating on her with a guy. It was a complete web of teenage drama. Sarah decided to have an abortion. Her parents supported her. My wife was relieved but also heartbroken that we'd gone through all that stress for nothing. Jake came out to us officially after the test. He said he was glad the truth was out. He said he'd been scared to tell us he was bisexual, but after the pregnancy scare, he realized he couldn't hide anymore. I hugged him. I told him I loved him no matter what. My wife needed more time. She's still struggling with it. She grew up in a conservative household, and this is hard for her. But she's trying. So yeah, My son is gay or bi, he's still figuring it out, and at least he's having protected sex with his boyfriend. No chance of another pregnancy that way. Small mercies, I guess. I never thought I'd be grateful that my son cheated on his girlfriend with another boy, but here we are. Life is weird. And if that wasn't enough workplace madness, here's what happened at my job. My name's not important, but let's say I work for a company where the CEO is a complete dick. I'm not exaggerating, his nickname around the office is Dick because he really is one. I've been there for almost a decade, never missed a deadline, always picked up slack, but I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. Then I had a baby and suddenly I got silently demoted. No explanation, no review, just my title changed and my responsibilities shrunk. Meanwhile, my coworker Bob, the golden boy, kept getting promoted for being a family man. Bob's wife stayed home with their kid, and Dick thought that was the most admirable thing in the world. Bob started showing up late, sleeping at his desk, missing meetings, but every time he got a promotion. First he was my peer, then he outranked me. And then he moved across the country for a family emergency and got another promotion. So when he texted me out of the blue last December, I was already fed up. The text came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a spreadsheet when my phone buzzed. Bob's name popped up. I hadn't talked to him in months. The message read, "Hey, I need a favor. My wife, toddler, and dog need a place to stay for a week in January. Can you host them? If not, I'll ask the company to pay for a hotel, but that's a hassle. Let me know." I stared at the screen. Gobsmacked is the only word, utterly gobsmacked. This guy who had never once thanked me for covering his projects, who got a corner office because he reproduced, who hadn't spoken to me in half a year, was asking me to house his entire family and their dog for a week. And he mentioned the company paying as an afterthought, like it was a burden on him to even suggest it. I didn't scream. I just put my phone down and took a deep breath. I thought about all the times I'd been passed over, the way Dick treated me like I was his mother, the way Bob got praised for being a dad while I got demoted for being a mom. The audacity. I typed back a simple "no, sorry, that doesn't work for me." No explanation, I didn't owe him one. He replied within 2 minutes. "Come on, it's just for a week, my wife is really stressed. The toddler has separation anxiety and the dog is old, he can't stay in a kennel. You have a spare room, right?" I didn't reply. I went back to my spreadsheet, but my hands were shaking. I knew Dick would bring it up in our next meeting. Sure enough, the next morning I got a calendar invite from Dick himself. Subject, quick check-in. No agenda. I walked into his office. He didn't look up from his computer. "Bob mentioned you turned down a small favor," he said, still typing. "That's not really how we do things around here. We're a family." I sat down. "Bob asked me to host his wife, toddler, and dog for a week. That's not a small favor, that's a huge imposition. I have a toddler of my own. I have a job. I don't have the bandwidth." Dick finally looked at me. "You could have said yes. It would have been good for team morale. Bob is a valuable employee." "So am I said, "but I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. I got demoted after my maternity leave. And now I'm being asked to provide free lodging for my coworker. That's not team morale, that's exploitation." Dick's face went red. He started lecturing me about attitude, about being a team player, about how Bob's wife was a stay-at-home mom and that was a noble sacrifice. I tuned out, I just nodded and left. That afternoon I went to HR. I didn't expect much. HR at my company is a joke, but I documented everything. The text message, the meeting with Dick, the silent demotion, the lack of raise. The HR lady took notes, nodded, and said she'd look into it. I didn't hear back for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Bob kept texting, "My wife is really upset. She thought you were a friend. I can't believe you let us down. Dick said you're being difficult." I blocked him. Then he started emailing from his work account. I forwarded those to HR too. A week later, HR called me in. They said they'd spoken to Dick and Bob. Bob had been told not to contact me again. Dick had been reminded about workplace harassment policies, but there were no consequences, no apology, no chain. I started updating my resume that night. I applied to 3 jobs before bed. Within a month, I had an interview. Within 2 months, I had an offer. I gave 2 weeks' notice. The day I handed in my resignation, Dick looked shocked. "Why?" "We're about to give you a raise." "Too little, too late," I said. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. My last day was a Friday. I cleaned out my desk. Bob walked past me in the hallway. He didn't say anything. I heard later that his wife had to stay with his parents that week in January and the dog chewed up their couch. Not my problem. I started my new job the following Monday. Better pay, better culture, no Dick. I still think about that text sometimes. I should have screenshotted it. But I'm just glad I said no. I'm glad I stood up for myself. It took years, but I finally learned that you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep your boss warm. And Bob, I heard he got promoted again last month. Some things never change, but I'm not there to see it. And that's the only win I need. Speaking of terrible bosses and exes, I've got my own story that still makes my stomach turn. My name isn't important, but I'm 27 and I just got a text from my ex-boyfriend Nate, the guy who dumped me in January after 9 years together. 9 years. We got together when I was 18, still in high school. He was my first everything. And now he wants to talk because he needs to get something off his chest. I don't know if I should meet him. Part of me wants to because I still have questions, but another part of me wants to block him and never look back. Let me back up. When I met Nate, he was this shy, funny guy who made me feel seen. I was a junior, he was a senior. We were inseparable. After graduation, he went to college and I followed a year later. We did long distance for a while, then he got into a major his parents didn't agree with something in the arts and they cut him off completely. They said he was wasting his life, so I stepped up. I worked 2 jobs while also being a full-time student so he could focus on his classes. I barely slept. I lived off coffee and ramen, but I loved him so I didn't care. His parents eventually came around about 3 years later. They started paying for his tuition again and we moved into a nicer apartment. Nate said he wanted to take care of me now that it was his turn. He asked me to quit my job. I didn't. I kept working part-time because I didn't trust that his parents wouldn't pull the plug again. For 16 months, everything felt perfect. He spoiled me dinners, gifts, weekends away. I thought we were building a future. Then he started making new friends at his job. He'd come home late, always on his phone, never looking at me. I'd ask about his day and he'd mumble fine and keep scrolling. I told myself it was just a phase, but then December hit and he did a complete 180. He love-bombed me like crazy. He bought me a winter coat I'd been eyeing for months. He made me homemade hot chocolate every night. He planned a huge Christmas dinner with all my favorite dishes. I really thought he was going to propose on January 2nd. That was the day he'd booked off work. He made my favorite dinner again: steak, mashed potatoes, roasted asparagus, and set the table with candles. He gave a speech about how I was his first love, how I'd been there since high school, how I helped him through the darkest times. My heart was pounding. I was already imagining the ring. But then his voice changed. He said, "You were a good girlfriend, but that's what you'll always be to me, a girlfriend. I don't see you as my wife or the mother of my children." He said he needed more, someone who challenged him, someone who wasn't so available. He said he wanted to explore other options. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, staring at the candle flames. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just put down my fork and nodded. I asked him to leave. He packed a bag and went to his parents' house. I spent the next 3 months in a fog. I deleted all our photos. I changed my passwords. I blocked him everywhere. My friends told me I was better off, but I didn't feel better. I felt hollow. I kept replaying that dinner, that speech, wondering what I could have done differently. I worked double shifts to keep from thinking. I started running every morning. I even deleted my social media for a while. Then last week he texted me from a new number. I almost didn't answer, but I saw the area code and thought it might be a client. The message read, "Hey, it's Nate. I know you probably hate me, but I need to talk. It's important. Please just hear me out." I stared at the screen for 10 minutes. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. Part of me wanted to know what he had to say. I didn't reply. He texted again the next day. "I have to get something off my chest. I owe you that much. Can we meet for coffee? I'll be at the Starbucks near your old apartment on Saturday at 2. I haven't been to that Starbucks since we broke up. But my curiosity got the better of me. I went. I told myself I'd just hear him out, then walk away forever. Saturday came. I wore jeans and a hoodie, no makeup, because I didn't want him to think I was trying to impress him. He was already there, sitting by the window, looking nervous. He had a coffee in front of him, untouched. I sat down across from him. He looked older, tired. His eyes were red. He started talking fast, like he was afraid I'd leave. He said after we broke up, he immediately started dating a coworker, a woman he'd been flirting with for months. He said he thought she was his soulmate. He thought she was the one who would challenge him and make him feel alive. He told her he'd ended a 9-year relationship just to be with her. And do you know what she did? She looked at him like he was insane. She said, "What's your name again? I don't even know you." Then she called him a piece of trash and walked away. She told everyone at work what he'd done. He got transferred to another department. He's been humiliated. I sat there, not saying a word. He kept talking, saying he realized I was the only one who ever really loved him. He said he made a mistake. He said he missed me. He asked if we could try again. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it just came out. I said, "You dumped me on January 2nd after 9 years because I wasn't wife material. And now you want me back because your mistress rejected you? You've got some nerve." His face crumpled. He started apologizing, saying he was confused, that he'd been selfish. I stood up. I said, "I'm not your backup plan. I was your girlfriend for 9 years. I worked 2 jobs so you could go to college. I held your hand when your parents disowned you, and you threw me away for a woman who doesn't even remember your name. That's not confusion, that's cruelty." I walked out. I didn't look back. He texted me later that night, "I'm sorry. I'll always regret this. I hope you find someone who deserves you." I blocked that number too. I'm not going to meet him again. I'm not going to give him closure. He doesn't deserve it. I'm still healing, but I'm getting there. I started therapy. I'm learning that I don't have to set myself on fire to keep someone else warm. And honestly, the fact that his plan backfired so spectacularly, that's the best revenge I could have asked for. The coworker didn't want him. She walked past him in the office and couldn't even remember his name. That's the universe saying, "You made the wrong choice, buddy. So if you're ever in my position, don't go back. Don't let them use you as a fallback. You were never just a girlfriend. You were the backbone of a relationship that he broke, and he'll have to live with that." Speaking of wrong choices, another Redditor shared a workplace story that makes my blood boil. She worked for a CEO nicknamed Dick, and I promise you it was earned. She had been with the company for almost a decade, never missed a deadline, always covered for her coworkers. Then she had a baby and got silently demoted. Meanwhile, a male coworker named Bob, who did half the work and slept at his desk, kept getting promoted because his wife stayed home with their kid. That's the kind of double standard that makes you want to scream. So when Bob, now her superior, texted her asking to house his wife, toddler, and dog for a week in January, she was gobsmacked. Utterly gobsmacked. He didn't even offer to pay, he just said, if that doesn't work, I'll ask the company to cover a hotel. As if that made it better, she said no. She typed it out with shaking hands, and then the CEO called her in for a meeting. Dick said, that's not how we do things here, we're a family. She told him she hadn't had a raise in 4 years and was demoted after having a baby. Dick got red in the face and lectured her about team morale. She went to HR, documented everything. Eventually, she found a new job and quit. On her last day, Bob walked past her in the hallway and didn't say a word. She heard later that his wife ended up staying with his parents and the dog chewed up their couch, not her problem. She started her new job with better pay and no Dick. And Bob. He got promoted again, but she doesn't care. She learned that you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep your boss warm, and sometimes the only win you need is walking away. That mindset, knowing when to walk away, is something another Redditor had to learn the hard way. Except this time it wasn't about a boss or an ex. It was about his own son. I'm a dad. I've got a 16-year-old boy who I thought I knew inside and out. He's always been a handful, smart, mouthy, stubborn as hell, but he's a good kid at heart, or so I believed. Then everything blew up in August. Our son, let's call him Jake, had been dating a girl named Emma for about a year. She was almost 17, sweet, from a nice family. They seemed happy. Then about a month before all this, they broke up. Jake said it was mutual, that they'd grown apart. I didn't pry. Teenagers break up. It happens. 3 weeks later, we get a call from Emma's parents. They asked if we could meet. My wife and I drove over thinking maybe it was about some school project or something. When we sat down in their living room, Emma's mom was crying. Her dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. He said, Emma is pregnant. She's about 8 weeks along. The dates line up with when she and Jake were together. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. My wife grabbed my hand. We both started talking at once, how this couldn't be, how we'd talk to Jake, how we'd figure something out. We went home in a daze. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about diapers and car seats and my son's future being ripped away. We waited 2 days before telling Jake. We sat him down at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning. My wife started crying before she even got the words out. I just said, son, Emma is pregnant. She says it's yours. Jake's face went white. Then he got angry. He said, that's not my baby. I never fucked her. I didn't believe him. I knew he was sexually active. He asked me for condoms, he called them wrist stocks, and I'd given them to him. I thought he was just trying to dodge responsibility. My wife thought the same. She started crying harder, saying we had to step up, that we couldn't let Jake run away from this. But Jake kept insisting. He said, we never had sex, I swear. We did other stuff, but not that. I pressed him. I said, other stuff? What other stuff? He got red in the face and mumbled something about oral. He said it was unsatisfactory, so he never went further. I was furious. I told him that was disgusting, that he was treating a girl like a toy. He just sat there, fists clenched, staring at the table. I decided to believe him. I don't know why. Maybe because he looked me in the eye when he said it. Maybe because I remembered being 16 myself and knowing how stupid boys can be. My wife didn't believe him. She said I was part of the problem, part of boy culture that lets sons lie their way out of consequences. We argued all night. The next week we had a meeting with both families. Emma's parents were calm but firm. They wanted to discuss funding, custody, all that nightmare stuff. My wife jumped in, already planning a nursery. Jake sat there silent. Then he spoke up. He said, it's not my baby. We never had sex. I cheated on her. I'm sorry, but I'm telling the truth. The room went dead quiet. Emma's mom asked what he meant by cheated. Jake wouldn't say. He just kept repeating that he never had sex with Emma. Emma herself looked down at her lap. Her dad asked her directly, did you and Jake ever have intercourse? She shook her head. She said, no, we only did other things. I got pregnant with someone else. I thought my wife was going to pass out. Emma admitted she'd been with another guy, a senior from a different school, a few weeks before she and Jake broke up. She didn't know who the father was. She was scared. Her parents were devastated, but Jake still looked angry. We went home. My wife was silent. I said, we need a paternity test. She nodded. It took another 2 weeks to get the results. Those 2 weeks were a war zone. My wife wouldn't look at Jake. She blamed him for lying, for not telling us sooner. Jake stayed in his room, only coming out for food. I felt stuck in the middle. Finally, the test came back. Negative, not his child. I felt relief, so much relief, but also a deep, cold anger. Jake had lied about something else. He said he'd cheated on Emma. What did that mean? I sat him down alone. That's when everything changed. He started crying, real ugly crying. He said, Dad, I didn't cheat on Emma with a girl. I cheated on her with a boy. I'm gay. I've known for like 2 years. I didn't know how to tell you and Mom. I thought you'd hate me. I didn't scream. I didn't say he was going to hell. I just sat there staring at my son, this kid I'd watched grow up, taught to throw a baseball, driven to school 1,000 times, and I saw how scared he was. I pulled him into a hug. I said, I don't hate you. I could never hate you. I'm just sorry you felt like you couldn't tell me. He clung to me. He told me his boyfriend was a kid from the baseball team, a junior. They'd been together for 8 months. Emma found out, that's why they broke up. She never told anyone because she was ashamed about her own secret. Jake said he felt terrible for cheating on her, but he was too scared to admit he liked boys. I told his mom that night. She screamed. Then she cried. Then she hugged him too. She said she was sorry she didn't believe him. Jake said he was sorry he lied. We sat in the living room for hours talking about nothing and everything. The aftermath was messy. Emma's parents decided to support her through the pregnancy. The other guy's family got involved. There were arguments, tears, and eventually an agreement. Jake broke up with his boyfriend, said it was too much pressure, he needed to figure himself out first. He started seeing a therapist. He's doing okay now, he's better. I learned something that year. Sometimes the people we think we know best are hiding the parts of themselves that scare them the most. My son wasn't a liar because he wanted to hurt us. He was a liar because he was terrified. And I almost let my anger destroy the trust between us. We still have rough days, but we talk more now. He tells me about his crushes, his doubts, his hopes, and I just listen because that's what a dad does. You don't fix everything, you just show up. And sometimes showing up means admitting you were wrong too. I don't know what happened to Emma. I hope she's okay. I hope her baby is healthy. And I hope my son finds the courage to love whoever he wants out in the open without shame. Because he deserves that, we all do, but not everyone gets a happy ending like Jake did. Some stories just keep getting worse no matter how much you try to move on. And if there's one thing I've learned from scrolling through Reddit at 2 a.m., it's that some people don't know when to stay gone. I spent 9 years of my life with a man who threw me away like I was nothing. 9 years. And then he had the audacity to call me back because he needed to get something off his chest. That phone call reopened a wound I thought had started to heal. And what came next? Let me tell you, karma is a bitch and she's got a sense of humor. I was 27 when all of this went down. My ex, let's call him Nate, was 26. We'd been together since high school, 9 years. I was 17 when we started dating. He was my first everything. I thought we'd get married, have kids, grow old together. I gave him everything I had. I mean that literally. In the beginning, it was great. He was sweet, funny, and made me feel like I was the only girl in the world. But life hit us hard after high school. He chose a college that his parents didn't agree with. They cut him off completely. No money, no support, nothing. He was devastated. I was already in college too, but I picked up a second job so he could focus on his classes. I worked at a diner during the day and a retail store at night. I was exhausted all the time, but I didn't care because I loved him. I thought that's what love was, sacrificing yourself for the other person. For 3 years, I was the one paying for everything. His rent, his food, his textbooks. I even helped him with his assignments sometimes. I was basically his mom, his girlfriend, and his financial sponsor all rolled into one. He struggled with depression during that time, and I was there every single night holding him while he cried, telling him it would be okay. I never complained. I thought that was my job. Then his parents finally came around. They started talking to him again and they offered to pay for everything. He wanted me to quit my second job. He said it was his turn to take care of me. For 16 months, it was amazing. He spoiled me rotten. Dates, gifts, weekend trips. I thought we were finally on the right track. I started saving for a wedding dress. I even picked out baby names. But then things started to shift. He made new friends at work, started hanging out with them more and more. He would ignore my texts for hours. He'd come home late smelling like beer and just shrug when I asked where he'd been. I felt like I was losing him, but every time I tried to talk about it, he'd say I was being insecure. Then December came, and he love-bombed me like crazy. I mean the works, candles, roses, jewelry. He cooked my favorite dinner, lasagna, and lit candles every night. He told me I was his first love, that I'd been with him through everything, that he couldn't imagine his life without me. On New Year's Eve, he took me to a rooftop and kissed me at midnight. I was so sure he was going to propose on January 2nd. I even painted my nails white. January 2nd, he made me that lasagna again. He gave a toast. He said, "You've been the best girlfriend I could ever ask for." And I smiled, waiting for the ring. Then he kept talking. "But I think you'll always be just that to me, a girlfriend. I don't see you as my wife or the mother of my children. I'm sorry." He dumped me on January 2nd. After 9 years, after everything I did for him, he said it wasn't me, it was him, that I deserved better, that he needed to find himself. I sat there at that table, the lasagna getting cold, and I couldn't even cry. I was in shock. I just nodded and said, "Okay." I packed my bags that night. I moved in with my sister's spare room. I cried for a week straight. For 3 months, I didn't hear a word from him. I started to rebuild my life. I got a promotion at work. I started working out again. I went on a few dates that went nowhere. I was starting to feel human again. Then in April, he called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. He said, "I need to get something off my chest. Can we meet?" I said no at first, but he kept texting, kept calling, saying it was important, that he owed me an explanation. I finally agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my apartment. Stupid, I know, but I thought closure might help. When I saw him, he looked awful. Puffy eyes, messy hair, like he hadn't slept in weeks. He sat down across from me and just stared at his coffee. I said, "What do you want?" He took a deep breath and said, "I broke up with you because I was in love with someone else. A woman I work with. I thought she was the one. I ended things with you to be with her." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but I didn't scream. I just said, "Okay, are you two together now?" He shook his head. He said, "She doesn't like me. She told me I was a piece of trash and that if I ever spoke to her again, she'd report me to HR. She said she never had any interest in me." I couldn't help it. I laughed. I laughed so hard I nearly spit out my coffee. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I said, "So let me get this straight. You threw away 9 years, for a woman who thinks you're garbage. And now you're calling me to confess because you thought I'd take you back." He said, "No, I just wanted you to know the truth. I thought you deserved that." He had the nerve to look hurt. I stood up and said, "You're right, I did deserve the truth, and now I have it. Goodbye, Nate." I walked out and didn't look back, but that's not the end of the story, because a week later I started getting texts from unknown numbers. Then he showed up outside my sister's apartment. Then he started leaving notes on my car. Nothing threatening exactly, just "I miss you and I made a mistake." It was creepy. My sister told me to file a police report. I did. They talked to him. He stopped for a while. Then a friend of mine who still works with him told me what happened at his office. The woman he was obsessed with, the one from work, she walked past him one morning and casually said, "Good morning," and he thought that meant she'd changed her mind. He started sending her emails, flowers, even showed up at her desk. She filed a complaint. He was put on probation. She got a restraining order. I heard through the grapevine that he lost his job a month later. He tried to contact me again, but I changed my number. I don't know where he is now and I don't care. What I know is that I wasted 9 years on a man who didn't see my worth until it was too late, and even then he didn't see it. He just wanted someone to comfort him after his own stupidity. I'm doing better now. I'm in a new relationship with someone who actually values me. It's not perfect, but he shows up. He doesn't love bomb me then leave. And that's more than Nate ever did. The lesson I learned: when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And when they come crawling back after they've burned their own bridge, don't let them use your heart as a stepping stool. You're worth more than being someone's second choice. Speaking of people who don't know their place, let me tell you about Bob. Bob was my coworker, and then he became my boss, and then he became the CEO's golden boy while I became the CEO's invisible maid. And then Bob asked me to host his entire family for a week. In my home. This was December 2025. I work at a mid-sized company where the CEO, who I will call Dick because that's what he is, has this thing about family men. Bob and his wife had a kid and she became a stay-at-home mom. Dick thought that was the most admirable thing in the world. He promoted Bob immediately. Never mind that Bob started showing up later and later to the office. Never mind that he was missing meetings. Never mind that when he was actually in the office, he was often sleeping at his desk. None of that mattered because Bob was a family man. Meanwhile, I had been working there for years. I had a baby too. But when I had my baby, I got silently demoted. No official meeting, no paperwork, just suddenly I wasn't included in important emails anymore. My projects got reassigned. My team got smaller, and I didn't get a raise in 4 years. I had the audacity checks notes to have a baby while being a woman. Apparently that made me less valuable. About a year ago, Bob and his family had to move across the country for a family emergency. Dick promoted him again. Bob went from being under me in the hierarchy to being at my level. And then a couple months ago, Bob got promoted to the highest level he can be. Now he outranks me. I haven't had a raise in 4 years. He's been promoted 3 times in 2 years. So imagine my surprise when I got a text from him. He asked if I could house his wife, his toddler, and his dog for a whole week in January. He said it was for a work trip he had to take and his family wanted to come with him, but he needed someone to watch them during the day. And he mentioned as an afterthought that if that didn't work, maybe he could ask the company to pay for a hotel. I was gobsmacked, utterly gobsmacked. I stared at that text for a full minute. My dude, you haven't spoken to me in months. You barely acknowledge me in the hallway, and now you want me to host your entire family for free for a week, and you only offered to ask the company to pay for accommodations as a backup plan. I didn't respond immediately. I took an aspirin and went to my meeting with Dick, and sure enough, Dick brought it up. He said, "Bob mentioned he asked you about hosting his family. I think it would be a good opportunity for team bonding." Team bonding. Hosting my boss's wife, toddler, and dog in my home while I'm still not getting paid enough to afford the repairs on my HVAC system. I said no. I said it calmly. I said, "I'm not in a position to host anyone right now." Dick looked at me like I had just spit on him. He said, "It's just a week, it's not a big deal." I said, "I have a baby, I have a life, I can't host a toddler and a dog for a week." He said, "We can work something out." I said, "No." The silence after that was heavy. He didn't say anything else, he just dismissed me, and I knew I had made an enemy. I started looking for other jobs that week. I updated my resume. I reached out to former colleagues. I was done. The audacity of asking me to host his family after everything. After the demotion, after the years of no raises, after watching Bob get promoted for being a family man while I got punished for being a mother, it was the last straw. But here's the thing, I didn't just say no and walk away. I documented everything. I had saved the text. I had emails showing my demotion. I had performance reviews showing I was doing excellent work. I went to HR, I filed a complaint. Not about the hosting request specifically, that alone is just bad taste, but about the pattern, the demotion after I had a baby, the lack of raises, the way Bob was rewarded while I was ignored. HR did nothing. They said it wasn't illegal. They said it was corporate culture. They said I could leave if I wasn't happy, so I did leave. I found another job 2 weeks later, a better job with a raise, and when I gave my notice, Dick didn't even say goodbye. He just nodded and said, "Good luck." Bob never responded to my text. He never apologized. He never acknowledged it. To this day, I don't know if he ever asked anyone else to host his family. I don't care. I'm out of that toxic mess. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge is walking away and letting them figure it out on their own. But some stories hit closer to home, like the one about my son, our son. The one my wife and I almost tore our marriage apart over. He was 16, just turned 16. He had a girlfriend who was 16, almost 17. They broke up about a month ago, then her parents called us. She was pregnant, slightly showing. The dates lined up with when they were together. My wife and I went into full panic mode. We waited a couple days before telling our son. He didn't know. We sat him down at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning. My wife was crying before she even said the words. I told him, son, your ex-girlfriend is pregnant. She says it could be yours. He looked at me with this dead serious expression and said, it's not mine, I never fucked her. I didn't believe him, I knew he was active. He had asked me for protection before, he was 17 now, wait no, he was 16, hormones were raging. I said, son, I know you've been with her, be honest. He got angry, he said, I am being honest, I never fucked her, I cheated on her. That stopped me, I had a heart-to-heart with him. And I know he's a shithead, I know he's lied before, but something about the way he said it made me believe him. He said he always rapped, he said he had asked me for restocks, he said they did other things that can't result in a baby, and it was so unsatisfactory that he never went further. My wife didn't believe him, she was convinced he was the father. We met with the girl's parents. My wife started the conversation by accepting that our son was the father. She was already talking about funding, about solutions, about what to do. My son stood up and said, it's not mine, we never had sex. He looked genuinely angry. Then he made a comment about how they only did certain acts. We raged at him for being disrespectful, but I still believed him. The girl admitted they rarely did anything. She gave us the when and where. It sounded believable, but I still believed my son. My wife was furious at me. She said I was part of boy culture. She said I was making excuses for him. She said children deserve to know their father. We argued all night. She slept on the couch. I slept in the guest room. Our marriage was starting to crack. Then the test came back. The DNA test, it wasn't his, 99.9% not his. I was relieved. My wife was shocked. She went quiet for days, but that wasn't the end. Because my son, that little shithead, he had a secret, a big one. When I pressed him again, he finally broke down and told me the truth. He hadn't been cheating on his girlfriend with another girl. He had been cheating on her with a boy from his school, and that's why he never went further with her. Because he wasn't interested in her that way, he was gay. I didn't know what to say. I sat there for a minute. My wife was in the other room. I didn't scream. I just said, son, you could have told me. He said, I didn't know how. Mom always talks about grandkids. I said, that doesn't matter. When I told my wife, she lost it. Not because he was gay, actually, she took that surprisingly well, but because she had accused him of being a liar and a deadbeat dad for months. She had called him names, she had doubted him, she had doubted me, and now she had to face the fact that her son was not only innocent but also struggling with something big that she had no idea about. We're in therapy now, all three of us. My son is dating a boy now. It's new, it's awkward. My wife is trying, I'm trying, we're all trying, but I'll never forget the look on my son's face when he finally told me the truth. That mix of fear and relief, and I'll never forgive myself for not trusting him sooner. But not every story ends with a family trying to heal. Sometimes you get a message from someone you thought you'd never hear from again. I was 27. My ex, Nate, was 26. We had been together for 9 years. I met him in high school. I was 18, he was 17. We were kids, but I gave him everything. I helped him through depression. I helped keep his grades up. I worked 2 jobs so he could focus on college when his parents disowned him for 3 years because they didn't agree with his major or his choice of school. I was also a college student. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat well, but I did it because I loved him. Then his parents started talking to him again. They started supporting him financially. We moved into a new apartment. Nate told me he wanted me to quit my job. He said it was his turn to take care of me. I didn't quit, but I appreciated the gesture. For 16 months, everything was great. He spoiled me. I thought we were building a life. Then he started pulling away. He was more interested in his new friends. He ignored me at times. I told myself it was just stress. Then in December, he did a complete 180. He love-bombed me the whole month. He made Christmas magical. I honestly thought he was going to propose on January 2nd. He made my favorite dinner. He gave a speech about how I was his first love, how I'd been there since high school. Every time he paused, I thought, this is it. But no, he dumped me. He said I was a good girlfriend, but he didn't see me as his wife. He said I wasn't wife material. After 9 years, after I supported him through everything, he ended it with that speech. I was devastated. I spent months crying. I lost weight. I couldn't focus. I thought I was overreacting, but I was crushed. And then in April, he reached out. He said he needed to get something off his chest. He wanted to talk. I almost deleted the message, but curiosity got the better of me. I said, fine. We met at a coffee shop. He looked nervous. He told me he had made a mistake. He said he realized he was wrong about me. He said he wanted me back. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I asked why. He looked at the table and said he had been in love with a coworker. He had ended things with me to be with her. He had thought she was the one. But when he told her he had broken up with me, she didn't know what he was talking about. She didn't even remember his name. He said she called him a piece of trash and told him to never speak to her again. He said he realized he threw away the only good thing in his life. He wanted me back. I didn't scream. I just stared at him. 9 years. He had thrown away 9 years for a woman who didn't even know his name. And now he wanted to crawl back. I said no. I said it calmly. I said, you made your choice, live with it. He started crying. He begged. I walked out. That was 6 months ago. He's texted me a few times since then. I never responded. I blocked him eventually. I'm doing better now. I'm seeing someone new, someone who actually sees me as wife material. And Nate, last I heard, he's still single, still creeping around, still trying to find someone who will take him back. He even showed up at my apartment once. I didn't open the door, I called the cops. They told him to leave. He did, but I still get a chill when I think about that night. Some people don't learn, some people think they can just throw away 9 years and then pick it back up like it never happened. But that's not how life works, and I'm not the same girl he left anymore. I'm stronger, I'm smarter, and I know my worth.